most respected faculty of today's virtual seminar, CB seminar, C.A. Jithin Christopher sir from Bangalore, Secretary of Kannur branch C.A. Shivaprasad, Treasurer Dinesh K. Kumar sir, immediate past chairman and my friend C.A. Saju, members of the profession, ladies and gentlemen, good evening to all. Today we are delighted and blessed with the presence of one of the leading indirect tax practitioners in India, C.A. Jithin Christopher sir from Bangalore, to present the most relevant and critical topic on GST, which is the expectation from scrutiny of GST annual return filed for 2017 and 2018. I feel that a lot of registered persons are concerned with the various notices received from the department stating that there are various discrepancies in the return filed for the year 2017 and 18. I am sure that our faculty, who is well experienced and on indirect tax representation, will address all the issues connected to the scrutiny on the return of 2017-18. I am also taking this opportunity to welcome all the members and participants to this meeting. Regarding the next week program, please remember the program on 15th by C.A. Gururaj Acharya on the topic complaints and deadlines under the income tax, GST, banking and other business laws. And also remember that on 18th Saturday we have another program on common errors in financial statement by the past president of ICICI, Amarjit Chopra sir. Moreover, I am requesting all the members to fill the Google form, which is mandatory to have the CPA credit. Now I request C.A. Saju to formally introduce the faculty, C.A. Jithin sir. Saju, please.
Chairman of the Kannur branch, C.A. Jaiprakash. Most respected speaker of this webinar, C.A. Jithin Christopher from Bangalore. Committee members, members of the profession and dear friends. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce to you the most distinguished speaker of today's webinar, C.A. Jithin Christopher. He is a chartered accountant, a cost accountant, and a law graduate. He qualified in 1996 and specializes in indirect tax laws. He is an invitee to the Indirect Taxes Committee of ICAI New Delhi. He is a resource person for the Institute in its various post-qualification programs on indirect taxation. He has also contributed towards publication of educational and research material by ICAI on various indirect tax topics. He is also a resource person for ICAI and government in conducting training for practitioners, trade and officers. He has been in practice since 2000 and specializes in advisory, litigation matters and indirect tax legislations. He is a partner in JCSS, a full service firm with presence across India. With these words, it gives me pleasure, immense pleasure to introduce to you the distinguished speaker of today's webinar, C.A. Jithin Christopher. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Over to Jithin, sir.
Thank you, sir, for those kind words. A student of this new law, we're all, I believe, as along with all other members, I'm also learning together how we will need to find our way around this new law. It's been little over 3 years, and this law has some remarkable things that I would like to share with members, and I'm very grateful for having been given this opportunity to come and share post-filing scrutiny related issues that members need to be apprised about. Friends, let me begin by mentioning that every return has mistakes in it. If anybody believes that whatever annual return has been filed is perfect, then it's a very serious misunderstanding, because if we know that there are mistakes, we can correct them. But if we believe there are no mistakes, then we don't even know where those mistakes are. I would urge members to entertain the possibility that in all the returns that have been filed, there is something wrong in it. if we begin by saying that my return that has been filed is perfect in all respects, then I'm afraid we may be surprised with the way in which the administration would interpret the law compared to how we may have interpreted. That's the first remark I would like to make for members to consider. Next, I want to state 5 areas of dispute, 5 areas of dispute that we will be busy dealing with in GST for 17-18 returns. Issue number 1, credit claimed is not satisfying all the conditions of section 16(2). Credit claimed is not within the time limit prescribed under 16(4). Credit claimed may be barred by 17(5). There could be supplies which are not for monetary consideration, but for non-monetary consideration where we may not have paid tax. And the 5th one is interest on belated filing of returns. Let us keep these 5 as the basic errors that our returns contain. And apart from these 5, there could be areas of difference in interpretation, but these 5 would occupy the bulk of the disputes. I'm not here to point out mistakes. I'm here to make a statement about the mistakes so that I can present to you what I have learned from the law about how the government is going to interpret this law. As you know, friends, there is no assessment in GST. We have a lot of training seminars, particularly for state GST officers. Central GST officers also need training, but state GST officers need more training because they are used to the practice of annual assessments. So we are repeatedly telling them that forget about assessments in GST, because as per section 59, GST has become a self-assessment based tax, which means the taxpayer himself has to decide whether it is a supply. He himself has to decide whether what is the rate of tax, what is the value on which tax is payable, are any exemptions available, what input credits can be claimed or cannot be claimed, and how he needs to claim it and utilize it. So the entire responsibility is on the shoulders of the taxpayer. So therefore, please bear in mind, if any officer writes a letter to you asking you to produce books of accounts, I have with me letters written by department asking me to produce books of accounts. How should we respond? Friends, there are 2 ways of responding. We can respond to an illegal notice, or we can respond to a legal notice. What is an illegal notice? I want to draw your attention to section 160 subsection 2. 160 subsection 2, which says where a notice is not properly served, replying to such a notice on merits or failing to raise questions about the validity of such a notice will make an illegally served notice legal. That is what essence of section 160 subsection 2 is. When you read about service of a notice, you also find section 169, which talks about how a notice should be served. There are usual ways in which notices can be served. The special ways of serving a notice, I will tell you. Special ways is by sending it via email to the registered email ID. Another way to send a notice is by posting it on the portal. When a taxpayer goes and logs into GSTN portal, under the To Do tab, he may find a notice which he needs to respond to. The third remarkable way is by pasting the notice on the wall of the business premises. The other usual ways of sending a notice you will be familiar with: service of notice in person to the taxpayer, to his advocate, to his consultant, to his family member, or by registered post, or by courier, or by messenger, or by paper publication. There are many ways 169 allows. But what you need to keep in mind is service of a notice is not only the way it is delivered to the person, but service of a notice includes service of a valid notice, service of a valid notice under a valid section, service of a valid notice under a valid section by a valid officer, service of a valid notice under a valid section by the valid officer to the valid registered person. As you know, in section 25.4 and 25.5, every registration is a distinct person. Suppose in Kerala, I have registration in Kannur and in Trivandrum. The GST notice to be issued to the Kannur registered person cannot be delivered to the Trivandrum registered person and assumed that the notice has been served. So keeping this in mind, we'll go back to section 160 subsection 2. It says, if you don't raise questions about the validity of the service of a notice, then you can never raise this ever again. The law requires questions about the validity of a notice need to be raised at the earliest opportunity and not after a lot of effort has been put in by both sides. In the past, members may be aware that when the matter is about to reach tribunal or high court, at that time these legal questions are raised. The law very clearly says if you don't ask now, you can never ask later. That is one point. Asking the questions about legality of a notice is indirectly also covered when reply to the notice on the merits is furnished. If I reply to the notice on merits, that means I don't have any objections about the notice. This is called the principle of acquiescence. I have acquiesced, I have accepted the validity of a notice even if it is invalid. So therefore, I'm making this statement for members to consider. There will be two kinds of taxpayers. Those who will reply to an illegal notice, those who will only reply to a legally served notice. I am not encouraging you to litigate, but I'm only cautioning you that litigation is inevitable. Litigation is inevitable for the reason that the department also does not understand GST. Please don't think that they are experts in GST. There are some experts in GST, but 99% are not experts. Only 1% are experts, and that 1% is not involved in administration of the law. They are involved in policy formulation, training, audit, and in certain key functions. So therefore, please expect to receive a notice. You will receive a notice not because you did something wrong. If you did something wrong, you will anyway receive a notice. But you will also receive a notice not because you did something wrong, because they didn't understand what you did. Please bear in mind, GST law does not allow the officer to call for books of accounts and verify those books of accounts with bills and vouchers, because there is no concept of assessment in GST. It is a self-assessment based tax. So therefore, friends, you need to prepare yourself whether you are going to close all issues at the first step itself, or you will reply based on what they are going to ask you. And if it results in a litigation, so be it. There will be two kinds of professionals, those who are scared of litigation and those who are not. Why somebody is scared is because they don't have knowledge. I challenge all our members, please don't entertain settlement of cases because nobody knows on the other side what is the correct position of law. So therefore, all of us will be forced to fight litigation in the department at various levels. The question is, do you know how to respond to a notice? I have 5 steps to share with you that you need to be very careful about. 5 steps. Whenever you receive any sort of communication, letter, email, WhatsApp, Gmail, email from Gmail ID, Yahoo ID, anything that you receive from the department for a taxpayer, first, don't ignore it. This is the first thing that you need to please bear in mind. There are a lot of articles and posts in social media. To the extent government itself has told that if there are any notices without a what is called document identification number, throw the document in a dustbin. I would differ from that view for the reason, for your own taxpayers' benefit, for the reason that I want to draw your attention to section 7512. Section 7512 says where there is a self-assessed tax which is unpaid, I have filed my returns and I have assessed my tax liability and not paid the tax. As you know, on the portal, returns cannot be filed with any unpaid tax, but the section 7512 further goes to say, and interest on such self-assessed tax, if it remains unpaid, then without having to issue another show cause notice under 73 or 74, recovery action may be taken under 79. Members may be aware there are 3 judgments of high courts: 1 Prefects Industries Madras High Court, 2 Mahadeva Construction Jharkhand High Court, 3 LC Infra Karnataka High Court. All those 3 judgments are wrong because the court in all those 3 judgments have been misled by the petitioners, where they have not informed the court the following legal aspects. Point number 1, the court has not been told that interest provisions are automatic. The court has not been told section 75(9) and 75(12) in 2 of those 3 cases. Point number 3, the court has not been told that amendment made to the interest provision, the proviso to 50 subsection 1 that was added, it is not yet notified, not because central government is slow in notifying, but state governments also have to amend the state law before it can be notified. Therefore, unless the law is changed retrospectively, interest which is automatic as on today also is on gross tax liability. Friends, when you look at 7512, you will find that interest on self-assessed tax does not require show cause notice. All these 3 judgments have said that show cause notice is required. But when you see show cause notice is required, there are 2 kinds of tax demands: self-assessed tax and disputed tax. There can be no show cause notice for an undisputed tax. There can be a show cause notice for a disputed tax. So these 3 judgments, the way I read it, are per incurium. They have not considered certain facts and certain legal provisions. But since those are judgments, you will take advantage of those judgments if any action is taken by the department. But the question is, action will be taken. You are required to respond. How do you respond? So I go back to my 5 points of approach that I want to share with members. Step number 1, don't ignore anything that you receive from the department, whether it is having a DIN number or it is not having a DIN number. If you look at circular number, I think 129, where they were talking about DIN number, in paragraph number 5, very clearly it is stated that in case of emergency situations, a notice can be issued without a DIN number also. Secondly, the practice of having a DIN number is only followed by central tax department and not state tax department. So state governments don't know about the DIN concept. So when they issue a notice without a DIN number, don't rely on central government's statement that without a DIN number, you are not required to act upon that notice. Because if you don't act upon it, what is there to stop the department from passing an ex parte order? In GST, friends, never before have we come across a situation like this, which we can see in GST. If you look at section 7510, very clearly, the law is laying down an end date for adjudication. Normally, members would have seen start date for a show cause notice, by when you should have issued the show cause notice. But here, the start date is there, the end date is also there, which means if you don't issue an order within the time specified under 7310 and 7410, 7510 says the show cause notice has to be dropped. In fact, it uses the words deemed to be concluded. So therefore, please bear in mind, department is also under a time pressure to dispose of the case. A taxpayer may be looking at the technical niceties of whether this is a legal notice or an illegal notice, etc. But please keep in mind, department has a time limit within which they have to pass an order, and members would be aware time varying cases, what sort of orders can be passed. Keeping these in mind, do not ignore any communication that comes to you. Point number 1. Point number 2, do not reply on merits. Do not reply on merits without asking the question under 160 subsection 2. What is 160 subsection 2? The legality of the notice needs to be questioned at the earliest opportunity. This is point number 2. Do not reply on merits without asking the question about the legalities under 160 subsection 2. Point number 3. Find out under which section this notice is issued under, because every section is having different powers. In one section, they can ask questions. In another section, they can pass best judgment order. In yet another section, they have to issue a notice. So therefore, please find out which section we are talking about this notice being issued under. I have seen notices where department visited the business premises and found that the accounts are not properly maintained. They issued a show cause notice under section 35, read with rule 56, read with section 122. We replied to that notice telling the officer, section 35 is not for you, section 35 is for me, as to what sort of accounts and records I need to maintain. If you are not satisfied with the way I am maintaining accounts, section 35 does not give you power to issue show cause notice. That officer was asking, then under which section do I have power to ask questions about books and records? We are here to argue the case, not to teach you GST law. Therefore, if you have anything regarding the case, you please reply. Otherwise, we will treat this matter as concluded. After 3 months, that officer issued the same notice under a different section, section 67, read with 122. I am not here to instigate the department. Please bear in mind, my concern for department is to the extent that we are spending a lot of time training departmental officers not to make legal mistakes. They have to take the sections under the proceedings under the right section. It is like saying you have committed a crime as per Indian Penal Code, therefore you have to be punished. There are two principles, what we call principles of natural justice. One principle is nemo iudex in causa sua. What does that principle mean? It means that no person can be a judge in his own cause. I will only give a notice. I will only conduct the hearing. I will only come to conclusion. I will only decide right or wrong. That is violating principles of natural justice. Second principle is audi alterum partem. It means that hear the other party. If you want to hear me, first you have to tell me what you think I have done wrong. To tell me, you have to tell me under the right section. To tell me, you have to tell me how you come to know that I have done something wrong. To tell me, you have to also attach the evidence on the basis of which you feel the self-assessed tax is wrong. Let's look at this principle of burden of proof. Under Evidence Act 1882, 1872, you will find very clearly that the law says the burden of proof sits on the shoulders of the person making the statement. In a self-assessment based tax, whatever I have told in my monthly returns or in my annual return, I am liable to prove. If anybody is doubting what I have said in my returns, then the person doubting needs to bring the evidence. Under VAT, members will be aware. Number of notices have been issued. On one hand, they have assessed my turnover as a works contract, collected tax on the material portion, given me deduction towards labor and like charges. 2 years later, they have a change of heart. They decide and send me a letter saying, it is not a works contract, it is a sale. Therefore, the deduction for labor and like charges is not eligible. You are now liable for reassessment. Now, to prove my innocence, I have to go and give facts, case laws, interpretation, references, and prove my innocence. And you know that in 9 out of 10 cases, nothing happens in that exercise. GST law has changed this completely, where it is for the department to investigate, department to find case law, department to find interpretation of my contract and prove the case. So therefore, friends, taxpayer is innocent in GST till proven guilty. Will they accept whatever has been filed in the return without questioning? Please bear in mind, department is entitled to question what we have said. Department is entitled to question what we have said. I'll give you a small example just to tell you how mistaken we are about the nature of GST. There is a person who brings paddy. I have a rice mill. There is a person who brings paddy. I will mill it into rice and give back the rice. I am a job worker. Milling charges by a rice mill is liable to GST, you are aware. Now, let us say he gives me 100 rupees per unit milling charges. He gives me paddy. I will mill it into rice and return the rice. The terms of understanding is that he will give me 100 rupees per unit. He will also not take the husk and the bran that is remaining in the milling operations. The arrangement is that I will get 100 rupees per unit for the milling activity, and I am free to sell the bran and the husk and keep the money. Please bear in mind, there is another expression in Latin called nemo debit. The principle is no person can give a title better than what he has. I cannot sell what is not mine to sell. So if you look at it from that point of view, please bear in mind, the bran and the husk don't belong to me. The bran and the husk don't belong to me. The person to whom the paddy belongs, the bran and the husk also belongs to him. So therefore, this 100 rupees that I have collected for milling is not the total consideration for job working. Let us say by selling the bran and the husk, I make another 25 rupees per unit. The GST I need to pay on milling activity is not 100 but 125. Friends, we are not interpreting GST law correctly. I know instances where we have paid bran rate of tax on 25 rupees and milling charges rate of tax on 100 rupees. This is definitely wrong. So please bear in mind, department is also undergoing training to assess taxpayers based on their own industry. Department is preparing what is called an errors master. Errors master. For every industry, they're coming up with what are the typical errors. The level of preparation that the department is doing, I would feel is on par with the preparation of chartered accountants. So therefore, I would encourage you, please, let us not be so confident with our innocence that we remain ignorant about this law. This law is not old wine in new bottle. this law is a new wine in a new bottle. So therefore, let's understand what this new law has in store for us. So when you receive any notices, first point, don't ignore. Second point, respond to it, asking any legal questions under 160 subsection 2, which you need to know regarding the legality of the notice. Point number 3, find out under which section. Today we'll cover the sections under which proceedings need to be initiated, under which section they're initiating proceedings. If it is under a wrong section, write to them that it is under a wrong section, because section 160 subsection 2 makes it a taxpayer's duty to ask this question. If he keeps quiet, it will become valid by his own acquiescence. The next point is, if you receive any notice, please look at what is the form accompanying that notice. If it is accompanied by DRC1, there is a form called DRC1. If it is accompanied by DRC1, then it is as good as a show cause notice. You are supposed to reply. If it is accompanied by DRC7, it is as good as a recovery notice. So you better attend to it. Otherwise, they can take money out of your bank account without your knowledge. Please look at Rule 142.6. Rule 142.6 very clearly it says that it is the statement issued in DRC 7 under 142.5 is as good as a recovery notice. So therefore, friends, please be very careful. Nowadays, I find it is very fashionable to blame the government and blame this law and make very negative comments about it publicly. Let me tell you, to say that this law is stupid, this government does not have brains, it does not require any talent or any high knowledge of GST. Any stupid person can make a statement like this. With great disappointment, I am sharing this. Lot of chartered accountants in public domain, especially young chartered accountants, less than 10 years in post-qualification, I find they are writing such rubbish comments. It only shows their ignorance and not their knowledge. I would sincerely request members from Kannur branch not to make negative comments about the law or about the government. The last point about the notices itself. First point is don't ignore. Second point is check the legal validity of the notice. Third point is whether it is accompanied by DRC, check the section under which it is issued so that you will know what action is permitted, what action is prohibited by the department. Point number 4, check if it is accompanied by DRC 1, take it seriously. DRC 7, take it with utmost seriousness. Last point, when you receive a notice, please identify, are you thinking of going to High Court or not? I find a lot of people writing saying that this is wrong, this is rubbish, this is unethical, this is unfair. Ask yourself only one question. Are you planning to go to High Court? I'm telling you, friends, 99% of people who make comments don't have the courage to go to High Court. Courage, I will tell you why. Because you don't know under which provision of Article 226 and 227 your grievance is maintainable in High Court. For a writ remedy, under which provision it is maintainable. I would encourage you to please read Kerala High Court, wonderful judgments it has pronounced. Other high courts also, you please see. If you're really sure that you want to go to High Court, please read the number of judgments where the writ petition is filed but dismissed. Please read why it is dismissed. Like I mentioned earlier, to talk about going to High Court is the easiest thing for a person, unless you know whether it is maintainable or not. I have been involved in advising number of disputes, telling them that it is not a fit case to go to High Court. In certain cases, suggesting that it is a fit case to go to High Court. So if you are not planning to go to High Court, don't make big statements. Look at the notice, however poorly drafted, however weak, However ridiculous the notice is, your job is to reply. Let us not look at the end result and today itself pass a decision. If we think that government does not know what it's doing, then there cannot be a person more ill-informed than me. So look at it from that point of view. So these 6 points for your consideration. Now we will quickly look at the provisions under which their department has powers. We have time of about 2 hours. It may be just sufficient for me to bring up basic points for your attention. Please feel free to make note of any questions, post it in the chat box. I will try and answer towards the end of the session, but more than asking questions, please make notes. I know a lot of members, they will listen to a point for 5 minutes and come out with 5 questions. But the speaker, I have heard a lot of eminent speaker, that speaker has been thinking about that point and studying about that point for 5 months. So if you are getting immediately questions in your mind, mostly it is wrong. So please wait. I don't want to discourage questions, but I don't want overload of questions. Please make notes, because you also are taking time off this evening to be part of this webinar, to study and learn, because this is not the end of your study. This is the part of your study. You're going to go back and read the law. So therefore, I would urge you to ration your questions. Having said that, the provisions under which they have power to take action. First, they have power under section 61. Under section 61, they can do what is called a scrutiny of a return. When you look at scrutiny of a return, first point to look at is the law uses the word proper officer. Who is an officer? Who is a proper officer? Every person employed in the department may be an officer, but only if he is empowered under a particular section, he is called a proper officer. Do you know if your officer who is communicating with you has the authorization under section 5 of the Kerala GST Act? Does he have the power? So when you raise questions about the validity of a notice, you have to first ask him, do you have authorization? In Karnataka, there is a concept called assignment note. The Joint Commissioner will give an assignment to the assessing officer, empowering him, who is an officer, to now be called a proper officer as per the section. In Kerala, what is the practice? You please find out and ask the officer if he is the proper officer. Please don't think that the officer is going to be angry with you for asking this question, because you will ask politely, because an officer who is ignorant about the law only will get angry. He is not doing his personal work here in the department. He is doing government work. He better have authorization. Otherwise, his actions are illegal. Just because he is collecting revenue for the government does not mean he can do whatever he feels like. Point number 1. So if you know that he is a proper officer only, you need to entertain any communication under section 61. Now in section 61, it talks about scrutiny of a return. To scrutinize a return, first he should know what is a return. 297 defines return as any return prescribed under the law. GSTR 1, 3B, 9, 9A, 9C, many documents are there. Which is the return? If you look at section 46, you will get a clue. 3B, 9 and 9A are only the returns. Of course, GSTR 10 also is specified, but that may be few and far between. So you will find that 3B and 9 are the returns that they are going to scrutinize. So you have already filed annual return sometime within February 2020. So they are going to scrutinize your return. When they scrutinize your return, please keep in mind the instructions for filing GSTR 9 very clearly says, without filing GSTR 1 and 3B, nobody can file GSTR 9. In order to file GSTR 9, all the mistakes should be corrected and then only annual return filed. So if I have not filed GSTR 9, department can do a scrutiny of 3B. But if I have filed GSTR 9, they cannot do scrutiny of 3B because whatever discrepancy they find out, I may have already corrected it in my GSTR 9. As per 47 of 2019, the law very clearly said that those who are who file annual return within the due date, their annual return will be accepted. Those who don't file their annual return, that is below 2 crores, those who don't file annual return, their return is deemed to be filed. What we have filed, if they ask questions, we may not have answers. What is deemed to be filed, if they ask questions, where will we go? So therefore, friends, please expect notices. They will scrutinize the return. Point number 2. Point number 3, from the scrutiny of the return, they need to identify discrepancy. Now, what is a discrepancy? There is a notice we received under section 61 where the department said you have lot of transport activity in your business, but from the return we are not finding GTA services payment of GST on reverse charge basis. Therefore, please give explanation. So the reply given to the department was, discrepancy in a return does not mean suspicion about the return. If you have a doubt or a question, the question or the doubt must come out of the return. It cannot come out of your imagination. So therefore, the discrepancy specified in your notice is not a discrepancy arising out of the return. It is a suspicion arising out of your knowledge about the business. And that was the end of that notice. As you know, in section 61, the notice has to be issued. And once a notice is issued, the taxpayer is required to give a reply. What is the reply? I accept or I reject. Notice will be given in form ASMT 10. They cannot give a letter, a notice, a proposition, an endorsement, or a plain paper letter. When the law prescribes a format, they have to follow the format. So therefore, notice in ASMT 10, reply in ASMT 11, order in ASMT 12. That is the order in which it has to flow. What is the conclusion? 4 points here. Proper officer, return, discrepancy, explanation. I will give explanation. What is my explanation? I don't agree with your conclusion is my explanation. What can the department do? Nothing. Department cannot do anything under section 61. They accept my answer, or they now have to take up my case for audit under section 65. Please bear in mind, the proper officer empowered to scrutinize a return under 61 need not be the same person with the authority to conduct audit under 65. So this proper officer will write a reference to his joint commissioner stating that the replies are not satisfactory, therefore audit need to be conducted. Then the joint commissioner will refer the file for audit, and this file will go and stand in the back of the queue for being audited. So therefore, friends, don't be anxious. You will receive notice. You will receive notice not because you have done something wrong. You will receive notice because they didn't understand what you have done. If you look at the structure of 61, there is no spot recovery in GST. There's a tax officer who asked this question, that they visited the taxpayer's premises, explained to him that GST is payable, and he accepted to pay the GST, and he has deposited the GST in the electronic cash ledger. The officer is asking this question, can you please explain the money that is in the electronic cash ledger, how do I adjust it towards a liability? There is no section under which officer can take money out of my electronic cash ledger. He needs to issue a notice. He needs to initiate a proceeding. He needs to conclude the proceeding with a demand, issue DRC 7. That is how recovery will be initiated. So therefore, friends, even if you pay money to the cash ledger, you cannot adjust it with a tax liability. I'll give you a quick example. There is this taxpayer who mentioned that his vehicle was intercepted. His vehicle was intercepted, and the department told him to deposit 2 lakhs of penalty under section 1. The because of the delay that this stoppage was causing, After 3 days, he finally deposited 2 lakhs. Officer released the vehicle and the vehicle went to the customer's premises. End of the month, when he was to file the returns, he saw that 2 lakhs is in the electronic cash ledger. He used that cash to discharge that month's tax liability. Officer does not know that he needs to raise a liability challan on the portal against this registration. Officers are undergoing extensive training as to how to raise liabilities on the portal. So therefore, in GST, there is no such thing called spot recovery. Once you identify that there is a discrepancy, ask for explanation. There is no, if you look at the section, it says explanation has to be provided. Satisfactory explanation has to be provided, is not specified. I will give an answer. What is my answer? It is not taxable. It is not taxable is my answer. If it is not taxable, why it is not taxable? You cannot ask me under section 61. For that, there is another section. The law very clearly says further proceedings need to be initiated under section 65, 66, 67, 73 or 74. So officers also need to understand under what section, what proceedings they are in. Let us say there is a registered person who is not filing returns, a registered person who is not filing returns. When he does not file returns, he is required to be served a notice under section 46, GSTR 3A. I am told that there are more than 30 lakh notices ready on the portal to be released whenever the government decides, because that many non-filers are there. A person who has taken registration and not filed returns is called a non-filer. Action under 62 is allowed for such a non-filer. So what authorities are required to do is they need to issue a notice in GSTR 3A under section 46 and wait for 15 days. In 15 days, if the returns that are not filed are filed, they have to stop further proceedings. But in 15 days also the return is not filed, without further notice, best judgment assessment can be made under section 62 of GST law. So please bear in mind, in GST, there is a concept of best judgment. We keep telling officers this, in the name of best judgment, you are doing worst judgment. How do you do worst judgment? Because you will take my last return filed, turnover is 5 lakhs. Every month you will increase turnover by 20%. Whole country is growing at 4% before pandemic lockdown, but only my company is growing at 20% month on month. And you arrive at liability and you don't give me input tax credit. Please bear in mind, this is the worst judgment that anybody can exercise. But the remarkable thing under 62(2) is, within 30 days of the best judgment order passed, if the valid returns are filed, then the order is deemed to be withdrawn. So therefore, please bear in mind, time limits in GST are not negotiable, extremely important, whether for taxpayer or for tax authority. The very beautiful judgment in Ratanlal and others versus Rewa Coalfields, the Supreme Court says, when the time limit is passed, the other party gets a right. What is the right? The right is the benefit of not having to comply. If the right is already created in the other person, this crossing of time limit cannot be disturbed. So therefore, please bear in mind, time limits are extremely important. Within 30 days, if I file a valid return, this best judgment order will be deemed to be withdrawn. But if I don't file it within 30 days, I don't file it at all, or I file it after 35 days, then the order that is passed, the only solution is to file an appeal by paying 10% pre-deposit under section 107. I cannot go back and negotiate with the department. Normally what happens, to file an appeal, you're having 3 months time. 30 days already we have wasted thinking whether we should file the return or we should not file the return. Out of that 3 months time limit to file an appeal, already 1 month is over, waiting like this. Only 2 more months is remaining. So therefore, friends, in GST, litigation is inevitable. Litigation will come. If you look at how the form is designed in section 62 is, it is DRC 30, it is ASMT 13 with DRC 7. I told you earlier, DRC 1 means it is a show cause notice. DRC 7 means it's a recovery notice. Be very, very careful. Under section 63, somebody who is not registered also can be subject to a best judgment assessment. Please bear in mind, till now we have not talked about giving a show cause notice to anybody. Best judgment is proceeding as it is. In section 63, somebody who is unregistered but who has a liability to tax. I'll give a small example. There is a person who has turnover below the threshold limit for registration. Let us say chartered accountant. There is a chartered accountant who has turnover below the threshold limit for registration. And this chartered accountant has agricultural income. Let us say he has rubber estate in Kerala. He has a Arakanut, cashew. He has some agricultural income. Please think whether this chartered accountant is liable to GST on his agricultural income or not liable to GST. Agricultural income is not exempt under GST. Agricultural products are exempt. Some agricultural products are exempt. Very few agricultural products are exempt. Rubber is not exempt. Cashew nut is not exempt. Arakanut is not exempt. Then how can this chartered accountant be exempt? Section 63 very clearly says, if a person has a liability but failed to register, or a person already had registration but it is cancelled, if there is a liability, department can directly issue ASMT 14 with DRC 1. DRC 1 means it is like a show cause notice, like I mentioned earlier. ASMT 14, they can issue a notice giving various pieces of information. Why am I carrying you through these steps is I only want members to be apprised of which section, what action. We'll come back to some of the issues that need to be discussed, particularly with respect to the annual returns you have filed. I have already mentioned in the beginning, 5 types of mistakes we have committed. I will come back to the GSTR 99A which we have filed after taking you through these provisions. Once you have replied to ASMT 14 in DRC 1, department can straightaway pass an order in ASMT 15 with DRC 7, conclude the proceedings. You can argue all you like. The only option is appeal. So therefore, friends, please keep in mind, our misunderstanding about the law does not mean the proceeding they are initiating is wrong. From the last 3 years, at least the last 1 year, what I have noticed, taxpayer has not been so careful. Last 3 years, department has not taken real stringent actions. Taxpayer thinks department is sleeping. So taxpayer, he knew some mistakes. Now he has become very bold. He doesn't want to accept those are mistakes. He now is willing to contest those cases. In the last 3 years, these questionable transactions, the values have become very, very high. When GST is 12, 18, 28%, you can imagine how big the liability is already become. Keep that aspect in mind. Section 64 says where the officer is having evidence on his hand. It does not mean only reason to believe. If he has evidence on his hand, the law very clearly allows the officer to take prior permission from additional commissioner or joint commissioner, and without notice, without informing, without discussion, without hearing, without anything, he can directly pass a summary of 16 with DRC 7. So I keep repeating DRC 1, DRC 7. Reason is members need to be aware in their mind. If it is accompanied with DRC 1, that means there is a chance to review. If it is accompanied with DRC 7, that means chance only for appeal. ASMT 16 with DRC 7. In 30 days, the taxpayer can go back and ask for the summary assessment order to be re-examined. Please bear in mind, in ASMT 17, he will request for re-examination. In 30 days, they can decide to accept or reject. ASMT 18. So please bear in mind, in any of the provisions we have seen till now, have we come across any provision where books of accounts can be called for? Books of accounts can be called for only in section 65. What is 65? 65 is departmental audit. Departmental audit is an exercise where the commissioner needs to audit an audit. Allotment of audit is done on sample basis. As auditors, members will be aware what is the sample you select. Nobody selects 95% sample. So therefore, very small percentage of registered persons are picked up for audit, but very large percentage of registered persons are picked up for scrutiny, verification, best judgment, inspection, those provisions. Now we will come back, having looked at the relevant provisions, how this exercise will be conducted. We look at what are the issues in GSTR 9 which we have already filed, and these are the questions they will ask. They will investigate under an audit also, under 65. I'm sure members are all very aware of GSTR 9, the form, how it has to be filed. We'll begin with April, May, June 2017. Did you pay VAT and service tax or did you pay GST? Obviously, if you paid VAT, no credit to your customer if he is in the service sector. If you paid service tax, no credit to your customer if he's a trader. There is an inherent incentive to charge GST at least that April, May, June period, so that GST benefit can be passed on. So therefore, friends, in more than 75% cases, April, May, June transactions, there could have been some manipulation. Therefore, department is going to definitely look at the correctness of taxation of April, May, June, whether GST is paid or GST is not paid. Point number 2. If you paid the wrong tax, can you be forgiven from paying the right tax? Sir, I have paid GST. I have paid 3% more GST. Why you are demanding service tax again? The right tax that you have, you are liable to pay will be demanded. The wrong tax which you have collected and paid will also be recovered. 15 plus 18. So therefore, please keep in mind, April, May, June, the transition period transactions will be first looked at. Second aspect to look at is, for the whole 9-month period, we have paid tax correctly. Somebody was saying, is GSTR 9(9)C containing errors? Chartered accountants know how to file balance sheet without errors. Somehow the trial balance will tally. Nobody will file 9C with unreconciled differences. Everything will be tallied one way or the other. I don't want to go into details of it. So when department looks at 9(9)C, they are not going to look for what is there. They are going to look for what is not there. What is not there? I'll give an example. If you look at GSTR 9, table number 5, which deals with exempt transactions, the question is, why is table number 5 blank? Why is table number 5 blank? Table number 5 requires exempt, non-GST, and no supply transactions. Exempt, non-GST, and no supply transactions. Please bear in mind, whether it is taxable or not taxable, nothing can be hidden from the department. So therefore, members need to be very careful to disclose this information in GSTR 9. Please go back and see how many GSTR 9 which is filed, table number 5 is blank. You will notice that those are the areas where taxpayer came to the conclusion saying, I have sold land, it is not liable to GST, why I should disclose in GSTR 9? Please bear in mind, it is not VAT or service tax where taxpayer will decide which information department needs to be given, which information department need not be given. Everything you have to give me. That is the law. If it is taxable, pay tax. If it is non-taxable, tell me why it is non-taxable. I will ask you a question about that also. So therefore, friends, data which you find in table number 4 is not so much of a worry, but data in table number 5 is a bigger worry, because I'll give 2 instances where what looks like it is non-taxable still needs to be reported in table number 5. Take the example of a chartered accountant's annual return. A chartered accountant normally receives money from clients to pay TDS on behalf of client, profession tax, ESI, PF, GST, many such statutory remittances are made online. Therefore, client will rely on the chartered accountant to do the remittance and not do the remittance himself. If you look at table number 5 of the chartered accountants GSTR 9, you will find everything blank. Although these monies received from clients are not liable to tax, it is not to be hidden from the annual return. You're supposed to disclose it, because only if you disclose it can the department verify and satisfy itself that everything is okay. If you look at the chartered accountant's annual return and you find table number 5 blank, you know that this is a mistake here. You know that this is a case which you have to pick up for audit. Why? Chartered accountant has not only collected money from clients towards tax remittances, he's also collected reimbursements towards travel expenditure also. You don't know whether travel expenditure recovered from clients is reported in table number 5 or left in the balance sheet itself. Please bear in mind, there are ways to find out whether a transaction is reported fully or not. Next aspect is, if you look at section 74, there is a definition of the word suppression. In English language, there is a word meaning for the word suppression, but in GST, there is a statutory meaning for the word suppression. Non-furnishing of information required to be furnished equal to suppression. Non-furnishing of information required to be furnished equals suppression. So therefore, friends, information that we are required to furnish, which we fail to furnish, is suppression. So you cannot even debate about it, because the law has altered the definition of the word suppression. Another example is, let us take a land being sold. A land is sold under a GPA. Members will be aware what is a GPA transaction. I have given 75 lakhs to the landowner, collected a GPA. 2 years time was taken to resolve some disputes with the land. After the disputes are resolved, I have sold that land for 1 crore. Very simply, is this sale of land? Is this liable to GST? Who is the one selling the land? What is the nature of transaction? In GPA holder's hands. If you disclose in table number 5, there is sale of land, the department can come and ask, please show me copy of sale deed. If we hide from table number 5, sale of land particulars, how does department come to know whether it is a GPA sale or a sale deed sale? GPA sale is liable to GST on the difference. Members need to be very careful. We are very innocent. Clients are very innocent. Nobody is doing hanky-panky. Because they are not doing anything that is to evade tax, they are so careless that they have done multiple mistakes. Now looking at table number 4 itself, you will find there are many transactions liable to tax. My question is, have you collected the tax and remitted? Do you have transactions which are exempt? Still you have collected tax. 2 instances I will give you. There is an exemption, but there is a doubt about that exemption. When there is doubt about the exemption, for safety purpose, can I collect the tax and pay it, or should I not collect it? If I don't collect it, there is a risk tomorrow. If the tax is payable, how to pay it, that risk is there. So the question is, when in doubt, what did you do? If you took an aggressive position, then there are other aspects to be investigated. If you took a conservative position, as you know, in section 76, when tax is not applicable, if tax, any amount collected in the name of tax must be paid with equal penalty and interest without input credit. many instances we find where taxpayers have taken conservative stand, collected tax, and paid it through credit. When exemption is there, you cannot use credit. Please bear in mind. That takes us to table number 6, 7, and 8 of GSTR 9, where you will find that members have made huge blunders. None of, maybe more than 50% of the credit taken is not appearing in 2A. More than 50% credit not appearing in 2A. 2A is not a statutory document to prove that you are eligible for the credit. 2A is nothing. Can you prove all the conditions of 16.2 is satisfied or not satisfied? Please ask yourself, how many members believe that supplier not paying tax is not a good reason for denying credit to the customer? How many members believe supplier defaulting should not be made a burden to the customer claiming the credit? If you believe it, expect litigation, because the law does not say that even if your supplier defaults, I will still give you the credit. The law says only if your supplier pays the tax, I will give you the credit. People are unhappy with this clause 16.2C. People are unhappy with this clause and they say it is ridiculous, it is foolish, it is illegal, it is unfair. I would like to submit to members, please divide all your questions about GST into 2 groups. Divide all your questions into 2 groups. One group deals with ethical questions. Another group dealing with legal questions. Ethical questions, you will get notice. Legal questions, also you will get notice, but you have to fight it through the departmental system. Ethical questions, direct High Court or representation to Finance Ministry only. Many times I find professionals also and trade mixing up ethical questions with legal questions. If it's a legal question, the answer is very clear, but we are still adamant about it. But if it is ethical question, we have to only do representation to get answer. I'll give you 2 examples of ethical questions. Transition credit, whether it should be allowed even after the due date because it is a vested right. Ethical question. Ethical question. How can you have time limit under section 16.4 for taking credit? Ethical question. Legal question. I have filed my returns. I have taken the credit. My supplier has not filed GSTR 1, but I have taken a declaration, undertaking and certificate from the supplier that he has paid tax on these invoices. Legal question. 16.2 conditions are fulfilled within 16.4 time limit. So therefore, friends, I would encourage you, divide your questions into ethical questions and legal questions. If you are having ethical questions, ask yourself, are you planning to go to High Court? Is your case maintainable in High Court? You may want to go to High Court, that is different matter. But is it a maintainable case in High Court? If it is legal questions, then you know whether you made a mistake or you didn't make a mistake. If you made a mistake, you want to fight just to prove that you want to see how the law will take its course, or you want to pay up the tax. So therefore, friends, between fellow professionals, when you look at a file, you can tell whether there are mistakes or there are no mistakes. I will repeat my top 5 mistakes. Conditions of 16.2 not fully satisfied. Time limit of 16.4 already lapsed. Conditions of 17.5 not satisfied. Supply made for a non-monetary consideration not offered for tax, and interest not paid for belated returns. Now, whether the law will change, whether the retrospective amendment will come, all that we will see later. Even as on this moment, the law says gross tax liability only attracts interest, not net tax liability. Because all amendments have to be passed and notified. Until notified, it will be prospective only. It will not be in force. And once notified, it will be prospective. To make it retrospective, some significant legislative action is required. So when you look at it from that point of view, how do we approach this? Look at input tax credit, table number 6, 7, 8. We have not satisfied the conditions of 16 to 100%. Some cases we have satisfied. Most cases we have satisfied. But all cases we have not satisfied. I doubt there is anybody, any single registered person in the entire country where his entire credit is matching with 2A. Nobody will. Next. As you know, government gave many options. Under 59 of 19, government gave many options. People said, this annual return is a big pain. It is not trade friendly. FM visited many cities in the country asking for feedback. Everybody said this is all rubbish. Look at what the government did. They did not change the form. They only said, whichever table is difficult, optional. If you have seen any treasure hunt shown on TV in a children's program or any grown-ups program, you will find they will draw a map. They will draw one dotted line to show where to go for the treasure. Then they will show one red color X and one big arrow. What it means? It means that is where the treasure is. You can, if you reach there, you can hide, you can dig and find the treasure. Anybody who has taken option in filling the form, that is the area of your biggest problem. What you have already filed is not the problem. Like I mentioned earlier, what you are reported, department is not interested. What you have opted out, what you did not report, that is what department is going to spend a lot of time focusing on. Because I don't need to explain this more. Your auditors, you know what to look for. When someone gives full explanation, you should not concentrate on that. You know, when someone is avoiding your questions, you know that is exactly the area where there is problem. When you look at GSTR 9C, I want to mention a few aspects for chartered accountants. We have certified it. We have certified GSTR 9C. We have certified the zeros also, my friends. Press release of July 3rd, 2019 says chartered accountant's role is only to do the reconciliation. You know how reconciliations are done. Whatever doesn't tally, you will put it in 5O, table number 5O, and you will give an explanation. Which means when they come for audit, table number 5A, turnover, from there all the reconciliation items are there. Everything is zero. One big fat number is in 5O, which means department is going to ask you, please give me breakup of 5O. That's all. All the problems are only there. When you look at a company which is having a branch in Kannur and a branch in Trivandrum, having two separate GST number, how can table number 5D, deemed supply, be zero? A chartered accountant certifies the zeros also. What does it mean when a chartered accountant certifies a form with some zeros in it? Which means he has applied his mind to the business, the facts, the law, the accounts, and he says inter-branch activity is zero. Is it possible? So I would think that an audit officer who has a good errors master is going to focus on table which is showing zero. We can say my job is only to do reconciliation because of the press release by the government, but the answer is very easy for a departmental auditor to know where you have missed out. If 5D, 5E, 5F, 5J, they are all zero, it means very clearly many things. The story is in the zeros. All right, sir. The story for a GST auditor is in the zeros. In departmental training for audit commissionerate, they are also told focus on the zeros. Next, table number 7, if you see, you will find all the exempt activities listed there. That is also blank, because although the taxpayer should prepare GSTR 9 and the auditor needs to prepare 9C, both have been done by one common team only. What we missed out in table number 5 of GSTR 9, how will we remember in table number 7 of GSTR 9C? The mistake has happened in both places. If you look at table number 9, it talks about rate allocation. As you know, friends, in 17-18, how many times government amended the rates? October 17, November 17, January 18. What is the effective date of a rate change? Effective date of a rate change is date of notification. But when did the rate get published in the to trade? As soon as the GST Council passed the resolution, it was made public. When did the customer ask the new rate to be applied? Immediately after the GST Council resolution. Therefore, if a GST auditor, departmental auditor knows the products or services of this particular assessee, whether it has undergone a rate change, in table number 9, he can see 12 and 18, 5 and 12 straight away in the table itself. All that he needs to find out is what is the effective date of notification, what is the effective date of invoice correction made in the software. That itself will show that 1 week before the notification itself, trade had already reduced the rate of GST. For that 1 week difference of tax, who is liable to pay? Customer will not pay. Dealer only has to pay. Did the dealer pay? If you look at DRC3 voluntary payments, you will find that he has not made any DRC3 payments. Friends, as auditors, I think we are in the best position to understand how a departmental auditor will look at 99C. If we think that he will not understand all these things, how can he know all these things? Please don't underestimate departmental auditors. Whether it is state authority or central authority, audit is an area of significant emphasis in the department, because assessment is gone in GST, spot recovery is gone in GST. So therefore, department is going to take various action. You need to, members need to be familiar with 65, 66, 67, 70, 71. These are all provisions members need to equip themselves with, because department is going to take little bit aggressive action. Little bit aggressive they are bound to be, because for last 3 years, they were asked to keep quiet. They were asked to keep quiet. Politely, they're asking, please pay interest. Politely, they're saying you have filed your returns after September, so the credits cannot be taken. Politely, they have been asking, you have filed returns after the 16/4 time limit. Therefore, you need to reverse the tax, credit taken, pay the interest, but we have not paid it. When department sent WhatsApp messages, we also sent WhatsApp messages saying, what is this FM, PM? Any minister, we know, we will write messages to them saying, is this called ease of doing business? My question for members is, do we expect, does trade expect government to accept whatever we did in the last 3 years? Is it not a statutory duty of the tax department to question? Let us take an example. I am a tax-paying citizen. Will I not expect the government to question you if you have defaulted in payment of GST? Can you tell me to keep quiet? You have paid correct tax. Don't put me in trouble. I will expect government to audit you, give you notice, collect interest, collect penalty, then only I am satisfied. The principle for that is called jus in rem. Justice to the society at large requires punishing the individual defaulter. So every individual defaulter, the society expects department to take action. So therefore, friends, if we think that annual return, whatever we have filed, department should quietly accept it and leave it, I think we are mistaken. Under which provision they will invoke to take action, that we need to examine. What can they do under 61? They cannot do under 65. In 61, they cannot ask for books of accounts. So therefore, we need to know how to respond. I'm not encouraging litigation, but I'm only cautioning that let us not be ignorant of our rights. The law says in 160 subsection 2, if you have any objection, object now or never. When the law says that, what will you do? No, officer will feel bad. Officer will feel bad. Therefore, I will give all the details. Anyway, it will be completed. Do you think by giving the details, officer will say, okay, such a gentleman, you have provided all the details, I am satisfied. Every officer is 100 times more scared than you. Every officer is 100 times more scared than you because he is BA, you are CA. You have difficulty comprehending GST law. You think he will have ease in comprehending GST law? He will want to book a case. He will want to put a note. He will want his higher ups to take a decision, not him. So therefore, friends, if you feel that giving details will complete the case, then I think this is a new law that is going to surprise all of us every step of the way. So I would only urge you, the way the law is meant to work, let us follow that step-by-step process. First, ask question about the notice. Second, find out which section it is issued under so that you can know the limits of the authority's power. Third, once you know that it is accompanied by DRC 1, you have to reply. If it is accompanied by DRC 7, it is already decided against you and it is now, next step is only appeal. So please look at the law, don't ignore. I would sincerely request members, this big talk about writ petition. I know a lot of people like to talk about writ petition. Please be a little bit cautious when you consider that. I would leave talk about writ petition to senior members who have that experience, knowledge to tackle those questions, to understand whether it is a maintainable case or not. What grounds to bring it up? Because a writ court is only going to look at violation of fundamental rights or other rights. How do you take a GST question and present it as a violation of your rights? We'll leave it for the experts. I don't think majority of members are experts in constitutional law and taxation. Therefore, my sincere request is, let us not do this high talk. Let us look at what is the process of law. Now, coming to the other side of the instance, departmental officers are scared about GST law. Senior officers are waiting for retirement. Junior officers are waiting for promotion to take action. So nobody is paying attention to reading this law. They also require extensive training. But once the training is given, they are going to take action. What action are they going to take? The last date for department to ask questions about 1718. I am not saying there is a fraud or a suppression. In a normal case, I told you there is an end date in 7510. the last date for department to ask any question about 1718 is February 2023. February 2023 is not some 20 years away. It is round the corner. How many assessees are there in Kannur? How many officers are there? For every assessee, if they have to spend 10 days time to find out issues, book a case, can they wait to start, or should they be starting anytime now? I would feel if it was not for lockdown, we would all have been in the middle of all these notices that we may not have had time to attend webinar. So I would definitely compliment the branch for taking this occasion and putting it to the best use for the service of members for knowledge dissemination. I would again come back and bring this point for members to consider. Everyone will get a notice. Please don't think that you will not get a notice. You will get a notice. In your own annual returns also, you will get a notice. Notices will come not because you made a mistake. Notices will come because they don't understand what you have done. Everything is different because books of account has accrual, GST has time of supply, both are not tallying, but you're certified saying it is reconciled. The way to find out is by asking questions. GST also, as you know, is not simple, and in the last 3 years, it has not been stable because the law takes some time to get stable. Rulings have come giving different interpretation. Notifications have come altering the interpretation. Rates have been tinkered in 1718 more than 3 times. And new provisions like 16.2, 16.4, 17.5, 18.6, multiple new things have happened. So therefore, it is only a reasonable thing to expect the department to ask questions. Answers will be satisfactory. Department may find that there is nothing to reply. Therefore, they may they close the file with that much itself. But can we say they should not ask questions? They will ask questions. Speaking about members, in your own mind, please assess what is your individual, all of us individually, what is our level of comfort about GST, whether it is classification, whether it is valuation, whether it is supply, whether it is credits. What is our level of comfort about GST? On a scale of 1 to 5, if we are more than 3, then I applaud you for your effort. If you feel you are not at 3, then you are in a high risk category. All your clients are also in a high risk category. Overnight, nobody can become an expert. We are all reading, we are all learning, we are all sharing with each other what we have learned. I would recommend 2 steps. 1, collaborate. 2, take up online courses. ICA itself has certificate course on GST. If you feel that it is extended time commitment, undertake study. Undertake your own study. There is a lot of material. Many senior faculty have covered topics, and YouTube videos are available in ICI website. Please take advantage of that material available. If these 2-step options, when I say collaborate, in Kannur, there will be somebody who knows about one issue, share knowledge. Because I would feel knowledge is like food. If you store it in the cupboard, it will get spoiled in 3 days' time. But if you share it with everybody that day itself, everybody will be satisfied. Because it takes only one decision, one case law, one notice for the secret knowledge one person has to become public knowledge. So therefore, please collaborate amongst yourselves to share knowledge with each other. Second is invest time to understand this subject, because this law, I would feel, has extensive amount of litigation in GST. In GST, friends, you know there is first appeal. You know that there is a revisionary authority who can overrule first appellate authority's order. Section 107, then you have 108. Then you have tribunal. From my calculation, all over India, we may have 79 tribunal benches. I am saying without a single member bench, without counting single member bench, I have estimated that we will have 79 benches of tribunal. When the pilot in a flight says wear seat belt, it means turbulence ahead. He does not say turbulence ahead, sit down and wear seat belt. He will only say wear seat belt. We must understand, when 79 tribunal benches are going to be there, do you think tribunals will have no cases? If second appeal will have 79 benches, how many first appeal, how many adjudication? When the government is getting ready for that kind of litigation, our responsibility is to get ready. 17-18 is just 9 months period. 18-19, now we have to fight. 19-20. So recognize that this is not something that is over. These are still early days. We are just starting off. We haven't even finished blaming the government and scolding this new law and writing bad articles about this new law, because notices haven't come. Notices will come. Notices will come, not because we did something wrong, because they don't understand what we have done. I want to bring my points for your consideration, 5 points to consider. Point number 1, any correspondence you receive from the department, don't ignore. Point number 2, when you receive a correspondence, find out under which section it is issued under, so that you know the limits to the action that can be taken. If you have any legal questions about the notice, please raise questions, because section 160 subsection 2 says you should raise questions. If it is accompanied by DRC 1, you already have a notice on your hand, straight away get ready to reply. If it is accompanied by DRC 7, then they're going for recovery action. Please do something that the law requires you to do. And unless you are planning to go to High Court, don't talk about High Court. Let us come back to the law, because I feel, friends, this law has been drafted by tax administrators, not necessarily lawmakers. Tax administrators have put their mind to draft this law. If you look at some of the intricate issues in the provisions of law, you will find that nobody other than a tax administrator can understand this issue. That is why they have drafted this law. If we fail to appreciate this aspect in the law, that would be a great opportunity missed to serve our clients. I would encourage members, invest time, because this law is not old wine in new bottle. And this law, everybody knows, especially department, that many taxpayers have treated this law without respect. They have done whatever they felt was okay. I know many chartered accountants who expressed, they went to their clients, informed them that I want to have a meeting with you, I want to have a training for your staff, because this law is very complicated. This law has some new things. It has a certain new ways of doing things. I want to explain to you. But the clients have told the chartered accountant, we don't have any doubts. If you have doubts, you attend seminar. And I know the pain of chartered accountants. Many places I have had the privilege of visiting only because of our institute. And whenever I've had the opportunity to share some of my thoughts with members, members have expressed a certain degree of helplessness. The amount of effort that needs to be put in is far greater than the rewards. I would only share with you that it is not only you, all of us are in the same position. And I feel if you take a sufficiently long span of time, the effort and the reward will be averaged. Don't worry, these are early days. We all have to put in effort. If we put in effort in the early days, then later our quality of response will be far, far better. I thank the Institute for giving me this opportunity, all members for making time to get together on a Saturday evening to allow me to share some of my thoughts. If I may not have presented in a palatable manner, please excuse me. My intention was only to convey the seriousness and the urgency, which I hope to have conveyed to some extent. If there are questions, I will be happy to take them. Thank you very much. Fox.
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful presentation and sharing your knowledge and your experience on this specific topic that is on GST. And I'm sure that all the members and participants will appreciate the fact that you have touched upon the various issues and concerns that is normally and generally faced by the members and the practitioners in the recent time. So thank you very much. Members and participants, if you have any questions, please respond that question, means put the question in the chat box, or you can switch on the video and ask the questions directly. I think certain questions are in the chat box. I will read out the questions, sir, because certain questions are in privately, it came privately.
Okay.
One question is that regarding GSTR 9 and 9C for the financial year 2018-19, whether we can, whether can we file return now itself, or any updation or change will be there in the return?
There is no official communication if 9(9)C of 18-19 will be amended or not. Many experts are saying that it will be amended, so prepare everything and wait for the form. But I have already started to file 9(9)C for 18-19 in our office. No need to wait. I don't think it is necessary to wait. If the work is complete, please file, send bill also.
Oh, fine, sir. Okay. So, thank you, sir. Another question is that a client is paid GST under section 9(4) for the year 18-19. The client is paid the GST, which he is not liable to pay under the Act and notification, and claimed ITC on such a tax paid under reverse charge mechanism. Now his question is, should such payment be reported under table 4G and under table 6C of GSTR 9? That means yes, 9(4) is paid, but it is not liable for payment. Now whether it is to be disclosed under table 9C, sorry, for table 4G and 6C under GSTR 9.
Don't report the liability in table 4, but report the payment in table 6 because you have taken credit. Even if it is not payable, if you pay any reverse charge under 9(3) or 9(4), first take credit because it is money. Since it is exempt, you don't have a liability, so don't admit any liability in table 4, but only report the fact that it has been paid in table number 6.
Okay, now he is adding the question that would the client be liable to reverse such ITC?
No. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You have paid it, you are eligible for the credit. If department has any problem, let them tell you under which section they are going to recover this money from you. It is eligible for credit, no reversal.
Fine, sir, fine. So another question in the chat box is, in respect of financial 18-19, by mistake, dealer has paid GST under section 9(4) in respect of procurement from unregistered dealer. He has taken IPT for the RCM, so paid by him. Since section 9(4) is not applicable for financial 18-19, how the same should be shown in GSTR 9(9)C? I think same question. I think GSTR
Same
9.
you answer. Don't show liability in table 4, but show payment in table 6. Since you have taken credit, please enjoy and utilize the credit. No risk to your credit.
Okay, thank you. Another question, whether incentive received, price drop received, etc. is taxable supply. Regular question.
As you know, circular number 105 has been withdrawn ab initio without giving reason why it is withdrawn. When you look at any incentive, please only keep in mind two aspects. One, is it a separate contract or is it a part of the earlier contract? If it is a separate contract, it is a supply. If it is part of the earlier contract, please examine if it is reduced from the purchase value by you, reduced from the sale value by the supplier. Normally what happens, nobody reduces their sales, but the customer will want to reduce it from the purchases to avoid credit reversal. The central aspect is it arising from a same contract or from a separate contract between the same parties? In 9 out of 10 cases, I am telling you, it is an incentive. You are liable to issue an invoice, charge 18% GST under 9961 distributive trade services. You are supposed to pay GST. 9 out of 10 cases. Only 1 out of 10 cases, it can be reduced from the purchase value.
Okay, okay, sir. But normally the trade discount, sir, that is against the purchases. Normally it is happening based upon the purchases. It is not with respect to the outward supplies.
Correct. What happens is, was it known before the supply becomes a question? Normally it is not known and it is suddenly given subsequently as an incentive but shown as a discount. That becomes a question.
Okay, okay, sir. Okay, any other questions, please? So one question from my part is, in many cases it is seen that the GST officials are again requesting for the production of books of accounts. You have already mentioned that. Now, as far as the discrepancies are concerned, by scrutinizing the return under section 61, without having these type of details by verifying the books of accounts, how the department official will say that there are discrepancies apart from the two-way differences? So if they are asking these books of account, whether I am bound to produce the books of account or what will be the stand?
No, you're not liable to produce books of accounts under 61. You are requested to politely give only reply in ASMT 11 saying that the discrepancy noticed requires further investigation as per your notice. Therefore, I am not permitted to produce books of accounts.
So,
Okay, okay.
JB, so one question regarding the discrepancies between the 2A and 3B. Normally, we are starting getting notices asking us to explain why this difference has occurred, and we are given a 15 days time. Now, in almost as you rightly mentioned, in almost all the cases, the 2A and 3B won't match. There would be an excess availment under 3B. So, I mean, should we go ahead? I mean, what would be the course of action that we are required to take going forward? Your opinion, sir.
Our standard reply, after we file the reply, department doesn't come back only. Our reply is as per section 160 subsection 2.
Sir.
You have not specified under which section you are doing the investigation between 2A and 3B. Kindly communicate that in case further reply is required from our end. We are not permitted as per law to reply to general inquiries of this nature.
So that is the stance we have to take upfront.
Yes, yes, because if you entertain the notice like this, you are giving such a illegal notice legitimacy.
All right. So as sir rightly as advised in the beginning, we have to check out whether we have to take a stance that this particular notice is illegal upfront.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right. And coming to the discount part, sir, whether is it okay? Is there a requirement for a perfectly? I mean, you said it has to be linked to the purchases, and that should be known at the time of effecting the purchases.
Right.
Coming to the discount.
Right.
Now, what is the basic cross check? Like a mail communication is enough for identifying this discount, or I mean prior to the purchase happening, or I mean subsequent to the purchase sale itself or purchase itself, there is a communication from the supplier saying that you are entitled to such and such discount, because that is where the confusion is happening.
See, normally what happens, in each trade there is a practice.
Exactly.
Mail, subsequent letter, these are all creation of evidence and not reality.
Okay.
If you are involved in it, if you see a transaction where evidence is being created, proceed with it with caution. But if you are not in seeing a transaction where evidence is being created, you will find a trade practice. For example, automobiles, for example, pharmaceutical substances, electronic goods, FMCG products. There is already a trade practice. A standard discount policy is published periodically by the OEM, which discount he will give before, which discount he will give after.
Okay.
So therefore, and in 1718, please note, for every invoice, one credit note was required. It is only from February 2019 they amended the law to say many invoices, one credit note can be issued. But even till today, GST portal is not updated. So therefore, you may not have 1:1 credit note.
Thanks, sir.
So look at it from that point of view.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So two, three questions are in the chat box. One is warranty sales and free service liable for tax under GST. I think you have one.
Warranty sale by the manufacturer, no GST payable. Warranty activity fulfilled by the dealer on behalf of the manufacturer, liable to GST. You can refer Institute's background material on GST, where warranty treatment in the manufacturer's hands, warranty treatment in the dealer's hands. There is a detailed discussion under section 15.
Okay, okay, sir. Okay. So, one more question is there. Sir, is it audible?
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Okay. Wrongly taken excess IGST, ITC in 3B, but at the same time CGST and SGST less taken, should pay IGST separately or can adjust against the CGST and SGST?
I'll give two answers. Legal and practical. Legally, a taxpayer is not a tax authority. Self-assessment of tax does not permit suo motu refund sanction also. Where excess is paid, you're supposed to go for refund. Where shortfall is there, you're supposed to pay the tax. Now there are two types of IGST versus CGST, SGST. If output tax, there is a interchange like this. You can wait for the department to come back to solve this problem. You will get the refund also at that time. If you're doing this in respect of input credit, if you have taken the wrong tax as credit, that has to be paid. If the right tax has not been taken, practically I'm telling you, as long as 3B continues to exist, as long as matching of invoice is manual and the new return system is not in force, you can voluntarily revise your input credit register by shifting credits which you have missed out to take and appropriate the April, May, June credits towards the omitted credits and still retain the CGST, SGST which you have taken less. Please examine this and you'll be able to get your answer.
Okay, sir. Another one is whether the scheme amount given to retailer is liable to GST. More questions on the discount part.
Scheme amount given, what you need to do is, normally the big manufacturers are not deciding the GST treatment for such cases. what you need to do, we did this in one case for a dealer. We wrote a letter to the manufacturer and said, we are going to give, we gave the manufacturer 3 options. Option number 1, we will give you invoice for the scheme amount. Please pay GST extra, you will get credit. Manufacturer said no. Second option, we said, you give us a credit note with GST so that you take responsibility. They said no. Third, we said, we will go for advance ruling to get an answer about the scheme amount. Please confirm. They immediately came back and said, if you go for advance ruling and get a ruling that it is taxable, it will affect the entire company, all India level. Therefore, they came back and gave the GST amount extra. So please bear in mind, scheme amount is liable to GST in your hands. You cannot pay GST out of your pocket, but you will only receive the show cause notice. So therefore, involve the manufacturer, ask for indemnity or GST, whichever is convenient for them, they can give you.
Okay. Okay, right, sir, right. So I will conclude within 5 minutes, sir. So any further question? If not, I will, sir. There is one question from my part. Sir, normally as per section 74 says that if you are making the payment of tax and within 15 days before the notice, you have to pay 15% penalty, and within 30 days of the notice, you have to pay 25% of the penalty, etc., etc. So my question is, if I am settling the issue by paying say 15% or 30%, 25% of penalty, is it will restrict my right of the appeal? Because the act says that the proceedings will be concluded.
Yes.
To avoid that risk, I am paying that 25% penalty, and after that, whether I can go for the appeal for the same matter?
No. You have to write saying that I accept to pay 25% and close the case. Then only they will close the file. So you are required to give up your right of appeal if you want the option of paying 15% before show cause notice or 25% immediately after show cause notice.
Oh, which means that I have no right of appeal if I am settling the matter.
You have to give up your right of appeal, then only you can do that.
Okay, fine. So one more question in the chat box.
Yes.
In spite of the relaxations provided by government in filing returns during COVID pandemic, department is issuing notice under section 46. What should be the course of action?
Don't worry. See, under 46, when they give a notice, they're basically saying you are not filing a return. 46 is a notice for non-filer. Government has said there is a relaxation. Government is not saying no need to file return. Government is saying file return with exemption from late fee or cap of late fee. Department, please bear in mind, when department gives notice under 46, which means they are planning to do best judgment under 62. Don't ignore this. File the valid return within 15 days. Now for members to consider what is a valid return, section 217 says where the liability admitted and the tax is discharged. I'll ask members of this question, is nil return a defective return or a valid return? I will not proceed further. Members would have got the point. There's also one message that I'm seeing here which says insurance claim received, is it a supply? Compensation received for loss from insurance company is not a supply. No GST on the compensation amount received.
Okay,
Right.
sir. So one final question.
Yes,
If a particular month return was scrutinized and settled, whether it is possible to scrutinize the same return again and again, same month return?
yes. As many times as they get doubts, that many times they can scrutinize.
Okay. Okay, sir. Okay. Sir, and final one. As far as the authorization is concerned, normally we know that we are providing the authorization in the name of individual partner or in the name of the firm. In GST, whether the authorization can be in the individual name or it can be on the name of the firm.
All authorization should be in the name of individual only, stating partner so and so, firm name, because it is an individual representing. So therefore, please list all the partners' names or as many partners as necessary who handle this matter and get authorization in individual names.
Okay. Okay. I think almost all the issues you have covered, sir, and members may be clarified all the issues relating to 17-18 returns. So thank you very much for your wonderful support to the Kannur branch by sparing your valuable time over the 2 hours, especially in this COVID season. And I'm once again thanking you, sir, for the great support to the Kannur branch. Now, I request the Secretary of Kannur branch, C.A. Shivaprasad sir, to propose the vote of thanks. Thank you.
Beloved Chairman of Kannur branch, Chartered Accountant Jayaprakash, very distinguished and esteemed faculty and renowned Chartered Accountant Jatin Christopher, my dear members. Today we had a very relevant topic on GST. It pleases us to see the Chartered Accountant Jatin Christopher on our platform, the platform of Kannur branch. He always supported us. Last year also, he came to Kannur for one of the CP seminar, and today he presented the paper and led the discussion very beautifully. It was excellent presentation. We are very grateful to the Chartered Accountant Jatin Christopher for being with us, for sharing his valuable time, for sharing his knowledge, and for the excellent presentation. Thank you very much, sir.
Very grateful, sir. Thank you very much. Thank all the members.
And at the same time, we look forward to your continued association with our branch. We express our gratitude to the Chairman, Chartered Accountant Jayaprakash, and the members of the Managing Committee. We thank all the members for participating in the seminar and supporting in our activities. Thank you. Be safe. Take care. Good night.